Welcome everyone to the second video of our cardiac rehab nutrition presentation. In this video, we're going to discuss herbs and spices, salt and blood pressure, alcohol recommendations, label reading, and the importance of building healthy habits for the long term. Whilst herbs and spices provide depth of flavour to our food, they also provide properties that can benefit your health. But before we dive into these benefits, let's firstly talk about why salt isn't so beneficial for your heart health. High salt intakes cause blood concentration of sodium to increase, and consequently, the body retains more fluid to dilute or compensate for this. This causes higher volumes of fluid or blood to be pumped around the body, and hence increases the pressure in your blood vessels. Over time, an elevated blood pressure can place stress on these blood vessels, heart and kidneys, and increase the risk of vascular damage, heart attack and stroke, and kidney disease. The body's requirement for salt is actually very small, and it can be achieved from whole foods without the addition of salt to your food. Salt is an acquired taste, and it only takes about 4 to 6 weeks for your taste buds to fully turn over. Hence, you can unacquire the taste in about 4 to 6 weeks. Some ways that you can reduce your salt intake. Firstly, to reduce the salt in cooking or at the table. So just getting out of the habit of adding this in that cooking process or when you sit down to eat. Secondly, choosing unprocessed whole foods where you can, and where you can't, opting for low or no added salt products. Adding herbs and spices to flavour your meals instead of adding salt can be a way that you can still enjoy your taste of your food without increasing your risk of high blood pressure. Herbs and spices aren't just to enhance the flavour, aroma or colour of our food or beverages. They also protect us from acute and chronic diseases. They possess antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumorigenic and carcinogenic properties, and also glucose and cholesterol lowering properties. They can also influence cognition and mood. If you're someone who doesn't have much experience in cooking with herbs and spices, I've popped together a list of combinations to build your confidence. These will be included in your booklets. But to start, I would suggest keeping a small range of herbs and spices in your kitchen that are versatile in lots of different meals. You can also opt for pre-mix herb and spice blends to make it easier. For example, an Italian herb blend. Don't mistake these for seasonings. These contain a lot of added salt. You can also look up herb and spice guides online, which provide a great overview of the spice description and types of produce, protein, dishes, and other herbs and spices that it pairs well with. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of great news when it comes to alcohol and our health. The evidence for any protective effect of alcohol is much less robust than previously thought. It has been debated that the antioxidants, called resveratrol, in red wine, can be of some benefit. However, the amount of red wine one would need to drink to get enough resveratrol for it to be health promoting would be offset by the negative effects of the alcohol itself. Current evidence shows strong associations with high alcohol intakes and adverse cardiovascular outcomes. We've known for a while that high intakes of alcohol can increase the risk of chronic diseases, but more recent research has been observing the effects of even a low to moderate amount of alcohol on human health. Alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen, and there is strong evidence that consuming alcohol increases the risk of various cancers, including mouth, pharynx, larynx, esophageal, breast, colorectal, stomach, and liver cancer. Alcohol has effects on cells that change gene expression. So alcohol increases tumour growth and decreases the cells that suppress and combat tumour growth, particularly in breast cancer. Breast tissue in women is more susceptible to DNA melatonin changes. Some studies shown anywhere from a 4 to 13% increased risk in breast cancer for every 10 grams of alcohol, which is equivalent to a standard drink. Similarly, a recent study looking at 30,000 healthy middle-aged or older adults in the UK showed that low to moderate alcohol consumption, which was defined as 1 to 2 standard drinks per day on average, or 14 standard drinks per week, can cause brain degradation and thinning of the neocortex and other brain regions. Having said this, the current NHMRC guidelines state to reduce the risk of harm from alcohol-related disease, healthy men and women should drink no more than 10 standard drinks a week and no more than 4 standard drinks on any day. The less you drink, the lower your risk. So what is considered a standard drink? A light beer, which is 425 ml, a mid-strength beer, which is 375 ml, or a full-strength beer, which is 285 ml, are all considered a standard drink. Similarly with your cider. For sparkling wine, it's 100 ml. Keep in mind that when you have a drink at the pub, often those servings are 125 ml. So if you're planning to have a couple of drinks, you might actually be consuming much more than you think you are. For fortified wine, for example, sherry or port is about 60 ml, and for spirits, it's your 30 ml nip. In recent years, non-alcoholic beverages have become much more popular. Many wineries, distilleries, and breweries are making their own non-alcoholic versions of their products. Look for high-quality products made from one of these sources rather than products from the supermarket. I personally have heard really positive things about many of the non-alcoholic beers. I have tried some of the Proseccos and spirit alternatives and think that they're really great. So I do encourage you to give them a go. Another alternative to alcohol or soft drinks could be to add some fruit, lemon, lime, or herbs to some sparkling water. This can be a really refreshing and delicious drink, particularly in the warmer months. Food labels can be really confusing. They're often misleading and can make food sound healthier than it actually is. It's very important to know how to read food labels so that you're able to make an informed decision about the foods that you're eating. There are 3 important components when looking and deciding which product to choose. These are the ingredients list, which is a list of ingredients used to make up the food, the nutrition information panel, which is that tiny table on the back of the products showing us the nutrition breakdown of the food, and then the nutrition claims, which are the claims that are on the front of the packaging, often designed to sell the products. So for example, low in fat, low in salt, high in fiber. Ingredients are listed in order from largest to the smallest amounts used based on weight. Major ingredients of the food are usually in the first 3 ingredients. Look for foods low in saturated fat, sugar, and salt, particularly in those first 3 ingredients. Be familiar with alternate names of ingredients. Manufacturers may use different terms for fat, sugar, and salt. For example, MSG, vegetable salt, yeast, meat extract are still all salt. There is a full list of these alternative names in your booklets for reference. The Nutrition Information Panel provides us with a breakdown of the nutrition information in the food item. This panel has 3 columns, one with the nutrients, then a breakdown of these nutrients per serving, and then per 100 gram. The nutrients that will always be included are energy, which is broken down into calories or kilojoules, protein, total and saturated fat, total carbohydrates, and then a breakdown of sugars, and sodium or salt. Some manufacturers might include additional nutrients. For example, if it's a bread or a cereal, they might also include fiber. If it's a dairy or dairy alternative product, they might also include calcium. You don't really need to pay too much attention to the per serving column unless you're wanting to know exactly how much of that nutrient is in the suggested serving size. Keeping in mind, the manufacturer decides the serving size, and that may not be actually the amount of food that you decide to eat. This is probably most helpful for diabetics who require insulin, who need to know the exact amount of carbohydrates that they will be eating. The most helpful information is in the per 100 gram column. This is where we find the standardized information that we can compare products like for like. For example, we can take 2 yogurts and look at the per 100 gram column and compare the amount of fat or sugar and know that it's a standardized reference. We will provide you with a food label reading guide, which gives you suggested guidelines for each nutrient. For total fat, we would aim for less than 10 grams per 100 gram. The saturated fat is probably the most important here, ideally aiming for under 2 grams per 100 gram, or as low as possible. For total sugar, we would want this to be less than 10 grams per 100 gram. If the product contains fruit, allow up to 25 grams per 100 gram. As this contains fiber and other important nutrients we don't want you to miss out on. For sodium, aim for less than 400 milligrams per 100 gram. If you find products less than 120, that is excellent. This is actually considered low salt. If something's labelled as low salt on the front of the packet, it must be under 120 milligrams, and this is a great option. If the food product contains fibre, aim for more than 5 grams per 100 gram. Claims are designed to market and sell products. A product with a claim is not necessarily better than one with no claim. Always read the nutrition information panel to compare the levels of fat, sugar, sodium, fibre, and other nutrients. Common claims include reduced fat, sugar, or salt, and this just means that it's 25% less fat, sugar, or salt than the original product. No added salt doesn't mean that the product doesn't contain any salt. For example, pistachio nuts are naturally high in salt and should not be consumed if you are following a low-salt diet. Cholesterol-free is a really common one, particularly on olive oils or margarines. Remember that cholesterol is only found in animal products, so this can be misleading, particularly on plant-based oils. Light or light can often refer to the flavour or texture of the food, not necessarily the fat content. All natural means absolutely nothing. Fat, sugar, and salt are all natural products. Toasted or oven-baked is often a claim that's written on the front of packaging to make the food seem healthier than it is. Arnott's Shapes uses the term baked, not fried, to make the food seem healthier, but it is still cooked in oil or fat and contains a high amount of saturated fat. The Health Star Rating is a government-initiated front-of-package labelling system that rates the overall nutrition profile of products. It's a rating from 0.5 star to 5 stars and provides a quick and easy standard way to compare similar packaged foods. It's calculated based on an algorithm that takes into account saturated fat, sugars, and sodium per 100 gram, and it's balanced against the nutritional composition of fruits, vegetables, nuts, or legumes. This can be a really helpful tool when you're in the supermarket rather than standing there for hours and hours trying to read the tiny little writing on the back of the packaging. So I do encourage you to use this when needed. I'd like to share this study with you, which really emphasises the importance of healthy habits for long-term health and well-being. Often in cardiac rehab, there is a large emphasis on weight control or even weight loss. This study demonstrates that weight might not be an important factor when it comes to long-term health. Now, this was a very extensive study. They used a weighted sample of 133 million with an average follow-up of 170 months. They looked at 4 main health behaviours: fruit and veg consumption, movement episodes, smoking, and drinking. And what they found was that introducing just one healthy habit can significantly reduce the risk of dying of any disease or condition. Introducing all 4 habits showed that people of any weight range had the same risk of dying of any disease or condition. In addition to this, a meta-analysis of 29 long-term weight loss studies showed more than half of the lost weight was regained within 2 years, and by 5 years, more than 80% of lost weight was regained. Hence, we know that dieting for weight loss is a futile endeavour and does not achieve what most people perceive weight loss will bring them: good health and quality of life. So rather than focusing on weight loss to improve your health outcomes, it's far more important to focus on actually implementing and sustaining healthy habits long-term, regardless of whether your weight or shape changes. We've talked these last 2 videos about the importance of good nutrition, but it's also really important to have balance in your life. And all foods can fit in a healthy diet. Remember, some foods provide more nutrition than others, but even foods with lower nutritional content can be enjoyed in moderation and can provide satisfaction, variety, and pleasure to your diet, and that's a good thing. Food is more than just the nutrients it provides. It's also pleasure, joy, comfort, culture, and celebration. So having these foods on occasion is important for your overall social, emotional, spiritual health and well-being. There is no such thing as a perfect diet. You don't need to be perfect every time you eat. You have the flexibility to adjust your intake from one meal to the next to achieve overall balance. Eating the same foods all the time may not meet all of your nutritional requirements and lead to boredom or dissatisfaction. Eat foods from the different food groups and a variety of foods within each group for overall health and enjoyment. When you're listening to your instincts and noticing how food makes you feel, you're more likely to choose less nutritionally rich foods in an amount that feels good for your body. On the slide here, you can see how soul foods can be incorporated in moderation across the week while still including plenty of nourishing whole foods to support your health goals. If you're seeking some inspiration for new recipes, the Heart Foundation website and Grains and Legumes Council have a large bank of free nutritious recipes. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the nutrition portion of the Cardiac Rehab program. If you have any questions, please direct them to your cardiac rehab team or seek individualised support from an accredited practicing dietitian. Take care.